podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hi, Ed here, and in the second of our summer specials, we're talking to Calum Best. There's no actual football on at the moment, so we thought we'd dive back into the past. BT Sport have brought out a film called George Best, True Genius, and there's an accompanying book by friend of the show, Wayne Barton, and it looks back on George's greatest moments in a United shirt, starting with a player who joined at age 15 and culminating in the 68 Cup win. And I think it's a nice moment to reflect on the good moments from George's life, who would have been 75 on the 22nd of May, and not focus on, as George says, all the other nonsense. Anyway, this was a fun chat with Calum. I really hope you enjoy the film. It's called George Best, True Genius on BT Sport. You can get it on this app and the various digital platforms. And here's my conversation. All right, so I have Calum Best with me here. He's the narrator for the brand new BT Sport film George Best, True Genius, and supported the book of the same name by Wayne Barton, friend of the show. Calum, really great to talk to you.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for having me. And how good is Wayne as an author? He writes some.
Yeah, we've been. He's a friend of the show for a long time, so he's talked about a number of his books on here, and I've known him for many years. So yeah, it's great he could do this one that time.
Yeah, I actually couldn't ask for a better scenario. Not only is he United mad, but he also knew every detail about my dad there was to know, which made this whole experience that much enjoyable.
Yeah, the film opened. So congratulations, by the way, on the film, and I'm sure people will really enjoy it. So I believe it premieres the same day as United's Europa League final, and then it'll be on all the usual platforms and stuff. So it opens with him saying that he wants to be remembered for the football, not all the other rubbish. And it feels like that was the sentiment for the film, not the other rubbish and just the football. Some really great moments. I bet you had a lot of fun looking through the archive, which I'm sure you've seen a million times before. But how did that make you feel going through all that again and reliving the memories?
I mean, you know what? I was really quite thrilled to share this story that was just the football. Sometimes I think about this personal journey I've been on with my old man and all these highs and all these lows. I mean, there's no time that I'm never not proud and listening to a story and sharing a story. It's almost every day, whether it be at the barber or a black cabbie or whatever it might be, somebody comes to me with a story about my old man. And when Wayne said he was doing this book and he just solely wanted to focus on like 1963 to 1969, this time that built my dad's reputation at United as, the greatest footballer on the planet, I thought, yeah, I'm all over that. I've not done that personally. I've not actually spoke about that for a long time or seen it all put together so well. I see clips of, his goals in Northern Ireland. I see clips of the 1968. I see clips where he chips the keeper. I see all the clips, but I've never really put them in a timeline. And Wayne and Tom at BT Sport did it absolutely beautifully. They put all of this story from my dad at like 15 years old up till 22, 23. And one thing I really love about what they've done is that they've made it really cool and really current for us to pass on to the next generation. Because, I'm 40 years old and I'll speak to other, United fans or football fans that are my age or younger or older. But I think, how cool is it now that I have something to show the kids, show my kids, show football fans' kids to say, look at this time here. Look at this group of players and what they did. And I think it's really, really special. And I thought I'd actually seen all the goals and heard all the stories. And Wayne, like I said, he comes out of nowhere with all these interviews and all this footage that I never even knew about. So for me, it was really enjoyable. And I think we've done really well at focusing on the goodness here. And that was a big part for all of us making this film.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm just a little bit older than you, and so I missed George's time in the game. And so, I've relived his moments through archive as well. And I'm sure there's a brand new generation who probably might not have even heard of him, and this will bring it to, and sorry to say, because of course they should have, but modern life these days. But I do think it brings out his footballing genius beautifully. I mean, do you have any favourite stories on the pitch? Favourite memories?
Ooh, I mean, I've got one that wasn't on the pitch, and I don't know why this sticks to me, but I remember being about 15. Yeah. I probably shouldn't admit it. I was 15, and we were at a bar on the King's Road called Henry J. Bean's. And
I know
you knew it. It's not there anymore.
Well, I used to live in Fulham a few years back, so yeah, know the King's Road.
Yes, I mean, he took me to all sorts of places on the King's Road. I remember there was Poochie Pizza, there was the Feeney Pub. I could go on and on and on, but something about this one moment, I walked in and, he was having his dry white wine with ice, and I hadn't really drank in front of him before, and I was quite excited, and I said, "Dad, do you mind if I go get a drink at the bar?" And he said, "Yeah, go ahead, son, go ahead." So I went over to the bar, and I came back, and I sat with him, and I put my drink down, and it was a pina colada. Yet it had a little straw and an umbrella and a pineapple slice. And he looked at me and he said, "Son, you're not sitting with me with that drink." And it made me go, oh, the one chance I had to be cool in front of my dad. And I bring back this holiday drink that has an umbrella and a pineapple in it. And he went, "Nope." He was a real hard old school Irishman. "It's either a whiskey or nothing, son." And at that point I went, wow, I just completely embarrassed myself. But we move on, Goals wise, I know his favorite one was against Chopper Harris. I know that goal's played a lot, but when I look at that game, or when I look at this film, for example, and I see this little Irishman, and he was such a little guy, going up against some of the biggest players, some of the most brutal tackles, and he just rode them all out. And I remember he said to me that, he beat Chopper Harris, and Chopper came up to him and he said, "George, if you do that again, I'm going to break your leg." So my dad went, got the ball from the other side of the pitch, brought it back over, beat him again, scored the goal, and just showed off, really,
Yeah, watching the archive, and my co-host and I watched a lot of archival football during the pandemic lockdown, first one, when there was no actual football being played, and it almost feels like a different sport. Not just for the pace of the game, which is very different from modern football, but also for the brutality of the tackles. And it's notable that George, he gets hit and then gets up again, and then gets hit and then gets up again. And it's kind of fascinating to watch. How do you think he'd do in modern football with the protection from the refs being so much greater?
I mean, that is the question I'm asked the most. Or how much do you think your dad will be worth now? But I think he just had that gift, that special something that could have played at any point. You look at that ball, you look at the pitches, and I know people say all this stuff, but it is a case of imagine that how they played now. I look at some of those games, with Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton and Nobby Stiles and Paddy Crane, and I think, God, what a unit that would be on a modern day pitch right now. Wouldn't that be great to watch? So I think my dad just had that special gift. I think he became the best player in the world because he could do it at any point at any time against anyone. And I think that's really, really cool.
Of course, him and your mum met when he played for Los Angeles Aztecs or the Earthquakes. I'm not sure, but he spent a lot of years in the States towards the end of his career, which introduced him to a new audience stateside as well as those in the UK. I mean, do you feel he's sort of known over in the US, because there's a new generation of fans? Many people on the pod know I live over here now. There's a new generation of fans who are soccer mad, football mad, aren't there?
Yeah, it's huge there now. And I remember it was LA Aztecs that you were bringing up there, and I think it's 1979. I'm sure many of your listeners know, but when there was that wave where they tried to bring over Beckenbauer and Cruyff and Pele and Best to try to boost the soccer or the football, and I don't think it actually went down so well. But I remember my dad telling me a story about how he became friends with Elton John, because Elton John was the chairman of the LA Aztecs. So there was this big English and European invasion. And then my dad was at LA Aztecs, and he went to San Jose Earthquakes, which is where I was born, which is why I sound like such a Yank, because I lived there for 20 years of my life. But I think that he went to Los Angeles to get away from the madness that he was dealing with here. And it sometimes blows my mind that if it was, mad at that age, when he was still probably late 20s, early 30s, what it must have been like for the next 20 years of his life. But I think he went there because he wasn't known. And I think now, I know worldwide his name is still fully recognized, but I think Americans not so much. And that's why also this film is quite cool for me, because you can keep that legacy alive and show what he did to anybody that now is football mad in America, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that's nice. And because it's this new generation, it's a very young generation of soccer fans here in the States,
Yeah.
obviously. And they'll get to be introduced to George. One of my favourite moments, changing tack a little bit, in the film was where Sir Matt Busby and Joe Mercer are talking live on TV. City have won the '68 title, and Sir Matt congratulates him, and Joe wishes him best for the '68 final, which of course George was the star of. And I couldn't help but think about the contrast. Would Pep and Ollie go on TV to have a bit of banter after United win the title next year and City a second? I can't imagine it, but it would be fun.
Wouldn't it? I actually love that scene. BT Sport today put that clip out because it obviously, people watch that and go, "Oh, that's great." You can sense the sarcasm, but also the real respect that was showed between each other. He's saying, "Well done on the thing, but don't you forget, we're going for Europeans." Yeah, you better not forget that one. I think that Sir Matt Busby was absolutely incredible, and I think that what that team went through with Busby Babes. And then I think it's great that this story shows that after the tragedy with the Busby Babes, that, when my dad came into this team and they kind of rebirthed this new light into the team, I think the whole story is actually quite beautiful about how it was done. So it's a great story.
Of course, today United are sort of revitalising again. I mean, not quite from the tragedy of '58 and the success that George then brought, but from a slightly different tragedy, Sir Alex Ferguson retiring. But there's the European final, and I don't know how closely you follow United or today's football, but what are your thoughts on the current team and where it's headed and that kind of direction?
Yeah, mate, I'm a Man United mad fan, have been for my whole life. Although I did grow up in the States, it's something that I've watched religiously and follow as much as I can. And yeah, I think Sir Alex Ferguson leaving was a big enough tragedy, but I'm a fan of Ole. I'm a fan of where the team's going, but you look at some powerhouses like City right now and go, wow, like for a team to come up and match and beat that is going to be really tricky, but we're Man United and it's going to happen and it's bound to happen. And, we're the best club in the world. So it's only a matter of time. It's just trying to put all the pieces together. I think we're young and, not quite there yet, but on the right path to get there. They're talking about new signings coming up. Some people are talking about Harry Kane. Do you think Harry Kane's coming to the club?
I mean, the cynical part of my brain says he might do. I mean, of course, great player, and as Sam Busby said, I'd rather money was on the pitch than in the bank. But I wonder if that purchase is made, is it really what the actual team needs? And given there will be a limited budget this year, but do you have favourite players, or I mean, to ask this in a kind of hypothetical question, what sort of players would George like? I mean, he was such a carefree player, and there aren't too many of those left today, are there?
No, there's not at all, and I think that's why so many people liked him, because he was a bit of a rebel, and I always think about that contrast of Sir Bobby, who was quite uniformed, and then my dad, who was like this kind of rebellious player. But I remember, as much as my dad would give credit to players, I think he really quietly loved being the guy. He was an old school Irishman. He'd sit at the bar by himself, mind his business. But I think when it came down to the football, he was like, "Don't you forget me." But I do remember when I first came over to United from the States, my first game, I was about 11, I think, and my dad kept singing Ryan Giggs' praises. Like, I think that was the first interview I saw where he openly said, "I really, really like this player," But for me, I liked those years teams as well. I was a big fan of Scholes and Giggsy, and that was when I started really watching United as coming from the States. And I remember when I went to United when I was a lot younger, and I gathered this ball and I got all these players to sign, Beckham and Giggs and Scholes and Neville and all these people. And I went back to the hotel we were staying at, and I ended up kicking the ball around the streets on the floor and scuffed it all up. And I would think to myself, damn, I wish I'd kept that and put that somewhere special, because it had some great names on it. But I think my dad be rooting for United no matter who played for him. I think once it's in the blood, it's in his blood. That's the only thing he wanted to do. And I know that when he moved on from United, he literally chose teams that wouldn't go against United for that reason. And I got some tweet yesterday from Dunstable FC, and it made me giggle because they messaged me and they said, "Calum, if you're ever around, please come to our game." And I looked and I was like, wow, it's crazy that only a few years after United, when he was an incredible peak player, he went and played 2 games for this completely unknown side at the time. But I think that stuff's actually quite cool that he went to share his goodness wherever he could, really,
Yeah, I think people forget, actually, George had 10 fantastic years at United, more than 400 games. Very, very few players in the history of the club have played that many games or scored that many goals for the club. And I think sometimes the narrative of he burnt out and faded away isn't quite right, really. He had a very long time at United and so many goals and games. And then, a fun career after he left, as you mentioned, LA, San Jose, played in Australia, I think, for a game or two. I mean, how much did you follow of that period of his life? Obviously, you were very young. And was it more like when you grew up, you got to sort of reacquainted with his football?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, from an early 10 years old, I'd say I started watching videos and clips and started to really understand the power of what my dad had created. But I never really followed a journey. I wasn't around for his football time. Obviously, I just was. Once I started to understand it more, I knew I was going to watch every video and every clip. And I remember one day when I lived in the States, football was not even on the agenda for growing up there. It came like 10th in line when it came to sports. But I remember one day just instinctively I went, I want to play football. And I went out and I kicked the ball around and I was quite good and I really enjoyed it. So it just showed me there was something genetically there in the blood that made me go, I like this sport. I like this game. And I remember when I was probably 17 or 18, I thought, I think I'm good enough to do this. And when I look back as in to go pro, but I look back in hindsight and go, God, at 15 years old, the level of 15-year-olds in, Uruguay or in England, for example, were 10 times better than me. So it wasn't the same caliber, but what can you do?
Yeah, I wasn't much good at football either. And I didn't have the genetics that would help me. So yeah, it's, we are what we are in life. So it would have been George's.
On that note, I do remember thinking to myself, okay, well, if I can't be a legendary footballer, what can I do to match my dad? I'll be a legendary party animal. So I chose that road for many, many years. And then I realized, hold on, this is an unhealthy one. I can't stay at that. So luckily I nipped that one in the butt, came to peace with a lot of things. And now here we are talking about the goodness, not the badness,
Yeah, I think that's right. It's good.
Yeah.
It would have been George's 75th birthday just a couple of days ago as we record this. And, obviously it's a great pity he's not around to celebrate that. But this film gives us a chance to sort of relive those 75 years or the core part of his life that people are remembered for. And I think you'd be proud of this film too.
I do too, mate. And I think that, a lot of things have come together quite well for the time of this film. I don't know if I've said that already, but with his birthday being just now, and last time United won the treble and the night of the Europa final, it's like, it's a beautiful thing to me. I think it's all kind of come together quite well. And I love the fact that after United win, people can then go straight into a film of my dad and keep that joyous moment, that legacy moment alive, so we're really, really excited. I think people are going to enjoy it. There's a story to be told, and it's all pieced together beautifully. And for anybody who's watching that shares it with their kids, I think the kids will be blown away as well.
Awesome. Yeah, well, good luck to United. This is going out just after the Europa League final, so we'll know the result then. But I imagine United are going to win. They are the better side here, and I imagine George would have been proud of the direction this team's going right now. So. Look, many congratulations on the film and the new book. I'm sure people will really enjoy it. And, I've enjoyed talking to you about your moments reliving George's past here. And I'm sure it's been a great journey for you.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Thank you for having me on. The book was written by Wayne Barton, true genius. And it's because of his book that this film had been brought to life. So I'm just happy to share a bit of a personal touch with the narration on it. And, it's a beautiful time of football played by some incredible men, and one being the best player in the world, and that was my dad. So really happy about that.
Well, thank you very much. And 26th of May, 10:30 airs, and this is going out after. So everyone else can catch you on the BT Sport app and website, and I'm sure fans around the world will enjoy it.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for having me on.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.